obsessing over what sort of experience they can provide.
Less than $10 million.
More creative and more nimble than a bigger studio could be.
It's such a broad term.
Innovative, creative.
Its soul, its heart, its purpose.
What is an indie?
Hello and welcome to What is an Indie, presented by APS, produced by Space Time Strategies. I'm your host, Barrett. Let's jump into our first interview with Emerson from Tetra Studios, showcasing their action-packed game, Shatter Rush. Let's get it.
So I'm Emerson. I'm the founder and CEO of Tetra Studios, and we're making a game called Shatter Rush.
In one sentence, how do you usually describe Shatter Rush to somebody who's never seen it before?
That's a great question. Look, Shatter Rush is Titanfall with destruction. That's the best way I can describe it. You have all of the movement mechanics, all the mechs, that core gameplay of Titanfall, and then you combine it with the fully destructible environments of games like Battlefield or the Finals.
So what kind of game is Shatter Rush?
Look, as mentioned, it is a Titanfall with destruction style game, but more specifically, we really want to go into the elements that would improve on the Titanfall style of gameplay, that improve on the movement shooter genre. One of the biggest things we've done, and one of the most invisible things we've done, is a focus on accessibility. So when we were doing our initial research for the game and collecting user data as well as our own playtesting data, what we found was that a lot of players simply find these types of games way too hard to play, and they actually quit really early on. And one of the big goals of Shatter Rush is that we want to make sure that we're introducing the movement shooter genre to a massive audience who can easily get in and easily have fun. Because these types of games are awesome, and it's a shame that it's still niche. No one really plays these as much as they should. So our goal with this game is to take the existing elements of what works in the movement shooter genre and put it into a format in which anybody can jump into and have fun with. That's one of the really unique things that we're really proud of with the game, as well as that the fully destructible environments completely change how you play the game. I mean, not being able to hide from anyone, not being able to camp, just completely changes it. And it actually forces you to really engage with the movement system, which, for reference, this is a little fun fact, we spent 2 months just on the grappling hook, the wall running, and the slide, because we knew that if we were going to position this as a competent movement shooter and we didn't have those three things down packed, no one would play.
So you mentioned before, there are 3 core pillars. You've got parkour, mechs, and destruction. Can you break down what each of those mean in gameplay?
The parkour is inspired, obviously, by Titanfall, but also the movement system in games like the Finals as well. We really took a lot of inspirations, even Ultra Kill as well. Ultra Kill, Severed Steel, and Echo Point Nova. There's a bunch of games that we took inspiration from to be able to basically build this combination movement system. The parkour itself is designed to be extremely easy to pick up, but extremely hard to master. So we're talking advanced source movement mechanics, things like lurching and tap strafing, which if you played Apex, you'll probably be quite familiar with that. That was very prominent movement tech in the Apex space, as well as in Titanfall, of course, but definitely came to rise during Apex in about 2019 to 2020. So with the destruction, we looked at games like the Finals and Battlefield. And what we wanted to improve on was the performance of the system, as well as how much destruction could be done. So the issue with the Finals is that you'll know it has very high system requirements. If I'm not mistaken, it's like 12 gigabytes of RAM just for even playing the game as a minimum spec. I mean, the general performance of the Finals is very intense. And to be fair, they have really, really, really good real-world destruction algorithms. The fun fact, the way that they do destruction in the Finals is actually they run real-life building integrity checks over multiple seconds. These checks are so performance intensive, they have to run the checks over 1 to 3 seconds before the building actually collapses because it's so realistic. And that's awesome. But for us, what we want to do is we found there was a massive size of the market who didn't have good computers, who still wanted to enjoy that action. And so that's what our destruction's for. And what we wanted to do here was say, no, any building and any part of the environment can be blown up because that's just way more fun. The last part about the mechs, what we discovered was that there's a really big power fantasy, right? Mechs are all about just calling down a massive thing and raining absolute hellfire on your enemies. And to elevate that even further, the destruction system directly ties into that. So what we're doing is we're making sure that the mechs have the most ability to destroy the environment.
So were there any games that inspired you while making Shatter Rush?
The Titanfall inspirations are obvious. This really is a love letter to that type of game. One thing that we really notice that's missing in the FPS genre, that's something I personally really miss, is that type of accessible social multiplayer you see in games like Halo. So, for example, we have 4-player split screen in the demo right now on Steam. And that's something that you just don't see ever. In fact, a lot of players actually specifically mention in their feedback to us that the 4-player split screen is a selling point for them. They're like, thank you for adding this. This is so good. I'm buying your game day one because of just the split screen alone. These days there seems to be such a massive focus on hyper competitiveness. Things need to be absolutely optimized for the meta. You have to have the meta loadout, otherwise the game's not fun. And what we wanted to do with this game was go back to those types of Halo days where you can just jump in with your friends and immediately start having fun. You don't need to know about the meta. You don't need to know about custom weapon loadouts or anything. You can just pick a loadout and you can just go start having fun immediately.
I think also split screen is probably one of my favorite childhood memories. And then also getting accused of cheating in GoldenEye. You're looking at my screen.
Look, for me, it's Halo, Minecraft, Mario Kart, those types of games is what I grew up playing. And there's really no split screen games on Xbox or consoles these days, even less on PC, ironically enough.
Accessibility is a big focus for the team. How did that influence your design decisions?
It's important because we have to make sure that everything we do is easy to understand but hard to master. A really good example of this is, let's go back to that lurch example from earlier. So for those that don't know, this is getting into real movement tech. In Titanfall and Apex Legends, lurching is a mechanic where you jump, you let go of your inputs, and then you press another input rapidly, and it changes your direction mid-flight. What we discovered was that, firstly, most players don't even know this thing exists, right? So it's only reserved for the high-level players. But also, being able to really instantly change your movement is an awesome piece of movement. I mean, it's an awesome piece of movement tech. Why shouldn't everybody have access to that? And so that's why we added the dash ability. So instead of having to do this complex set of inputs where you have to jump, release, and then touch a button within the first 0.4 seconds of your jump, you just press Q or you just press your bumper and it will dash you in the direction that you move. We just thought it'd be better if everybody could access this awesome piece of movement tech, this ability to instantaneously change your direction by just pressing one button. That is a prime example of why accessibility is important, why we want to bring this awesome feeling that you get when you do these certain movement mechanics, movement systems. We want to bring that to everybody. That's a really big focus for our team.
How do things like explosive weapons, a cartoony art style, and split screen help introduce movement shooters to a wider audience?
I can talk about the art style specifically. So let's take a look at Valorant versus Counter-Strike. I have a lot of friends who love Valorant, who spend way too much time in Valorant, but never would touch Counter-Strike. Even though if they did play Counter-Strike, they probably would enjoy it a lot. It's because Valorant has a really accessible art style. It's an art style that anybody can enjoy. Really interesting world to be a part of, essentially. That alone is a really good example of what we're doing here with this art style, where we've gone down the cartoony route, not only for performance reasons, being able to run this on anyone's computer is a big win for us. If this was a gritty, realistic shooter, which we see a lot of, we see way too much, to be honest, way too much gritty realism in the FPS space, people think, oh, that's not for me. I'm going to bypass that. Someone came up during the playtest to me and they said, look, I don't play FPS games. My favorite games ever are Stardew Valley and Detroit Become Human. But I just played this for 30, 40 minutes straight at a convention and I had a ton of fun.
Give me a few fun words that capture the vibe of Shatter Rush.
I actually would say the best way I can describe it is just hell yeah. That's basically it. That's literally that awesome, that awesomeness is our driving factor. It's a chaotic equilibrium is possibly one of the best ways I can describe the game right now.
In your opinion, when you hear the term indie game, what does that mean to you?
It's a really tough question because it's such a broad term. I mean, you look at everyone from Schedule 1 to Expedition 33 counts as independent. The most common definition that people think about when they use the term indie, I would say, is less than $10 million and maybe less than 10 to 12 people team size. Hollow Knight, Silksong, they are indie because it's only a handful of people, right? I would say something like Expedition 33 would possibly count as a AA game because even though it's independent, the scope and scale and team size and budget is usually what you'd expect for these types of games. But I think when you say indie game, it typically refers to that lower end of the budget.
In your opinion, what makes Shatter Rush an indie game beyond team size and budget?
One of the things that we have access to as an indie developer is our ability to move quickly. So we do updates every 2 weeks, and that's purely based on player feedback. So every time you either leave a Steam review, you leave a comment in our comment section or on Discord, or even using our in-game feedback forms, we see every single comment. If you suggest a feature in our Discord server and we end up adding it to the actual game itself, you will get a notification. You'll get a ping in the patch notes, as well as a link to the exact message that caused that change to happen. In terms of what makes us different beyond team size and budget, I think the ability that we can move quickly and we can take risks.
So where can people play Shatter Rush right now?
So you can go to Steam and just look up Shatter Rush. And we've got a free pre-alpha demo. It's on Steam right now. It's got full global online multiplayer. It's got a leaderboard with a gauntlet run that's also multiplayer, fun fact. And even if you don't like Steam, we actually also have itch.io as well.
Where is the best place for people to follow your development?
If you're interested in specific feedback and specifically iterating with us on a day-to-day basis, our Discord is the best place for that. We have an absolutely amazing community that is super welcoming and just as passionate as we are about making this game. The best place to follow us for aura farming is Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Those are the 3 best places. Obviously, we have other accounts on like Blue Sky and X and LinkedIn and all that stuff. But if you want the best moments, that's where they go.
What can players expect next from you?
I am really excited to share with you this footage that you're seeing right now. This is a preview of our Destruction 4.0 engine. So essentially, we've gone through 4 separate iterations of the system. You can see there's interactable debris. There is the performance on this thing is insane. The performance on this, you can destroy a whole building and not notice any FPS drop. It's awesome. What we want to do, a specific iteration that we really want to do with the system, is that we notice in games like the Finals and Battlefield, you actually have to really try to cause destruction. It's something you have to really use explosive weapons and really shoot at the same building for a few seconds before you actually start to see any difference. Here, we want to provide instantaneous feedback, and we also want to make sure that any weapon can cause destruction. We are so hyped to get this into the game. It's going to be awesome. Again, this footage you're seeing right now hasn't been seen elsewhere before. This is literally like a world first here. So it's absolutely awesome. And this is going to be part of our Gameplay 2.0 update that we're going to be releasing in early February. I still remember the first time I got this working. I literally ran around my office. I was like, this is amazing. This is going to change the game entirely because it just, comparing to what we have now, and what the system is, it just is night and day.
I feel bad for any campers who are going to try anything.
Me too. But then again, I don't feel too bad for campers at all, so it's not really my problem.
Same. That looks amazing. What is it like being a part of the Australian game development scene?
I mean, think about Hollow Knight. That's made in South Australia. Schedule 1 is made in Sydney. It's an awesome scene to be a part of. If you're ever in Melbourne during October, make sure to also go to PAX. PAX Melbourne is an amazing event. You'll see so many great developers there, and you'll see so much really high quality stuff coming out of the space. There's only about 27 million people that live in Australia right now. So comparatively speaking, for the size of the population that we have, the talent coming out of here is just insane.
Did you always want to be a game developer?
That's a really good question. So when I was in high school, I wasn't allowed to play any games during the week. My parents were like, Emerson, you're allowed to play games during the week. You got to do your schoolwork, you got to study. But I found a loophole, which was I was allowed to make games. And I started doing that. I'm like, actually, this is way more fun. This is actually way more enjoyable than playing games. And, I've always liked creating stuff. That's always something I've been interested in. I'm very lucky as well. I found that early on, like while I was in school. I always knew I want to do something with games. Like when I was like super young, I'm like, I want to do a pro gaming. But now that I'm older, I'm like, actually, game development is really cool. And that's where I want to be.
What skills do you think an indie developer truly needs?
It's perseverance. I think is a good way of describing it. So in indie development, a lot of new developers that I meet with and that I mentor, one of the big issues I find with them is motivation. The perseverance to actually take something from start to finish and release it, I'd absolutely say is the biggest skill.
What skills do people say you need that are actually a total myth?
I would say there's a focus on, like, a lot of developers seem to be hyper-specialized in just one tool set. I would say don't do that. Specialize in quite a lot of tool sets, especially if you're an indie developer. You need to have a lot of hats that you can wear. Being competent. You have to be excellent. You just have to be competent enough to understand the engine, the tool sets, and how it works. And let's say you're a designer, right? You know a little bit about world building, know a little bit about combat design, but your real specialty is narrative. You lean into that when you make your game, you make it narrative heavy, so that way you don't have to worry about the other aspects.
What's a skill you didn't expect to need, but now use constantly?
Being able to talk to people, which sounds a bit odd, but like being able to like actually understand what someone's saying and be able to articulate your response in a way that benefits everyone is so important, because the game space is a very passionate space and people are very passionate about their idea coming to life over other ideas. And I think ultimately it's got to be what's best for the game, not what's best for the individual, or what's best for the product and what's best for the end result. There is actually this legitimate saying, I'm not making this up, in the game industry, which is you need to be able to kill your own babies, which sounds crazy, but essentially what it means is that if there's an idea that you love so much and you really want it to happen, but it's just not working out, you have to have the courage to be able to kill it immediately and move on. Because the longer you spend on that idea that's not working, the worse the rest of the game is, the worse the product becomes, and ultimately the worse the team performs.
So tell me what the origin story of Shatter Rush is.
Great question. The origin story in terms of the development, like how it actually came to be, was that I finished up quite a bit of work on Trident XR and I was looking for something new. It was like, all right, what can we do? What hasn't been done yet? And, I'd been playing quite a lot of Titanfall at the time, actually. And I was like, you know what? I really wonder if Titanfall can even be remade in Unreal Engine. I wonder if that's just technically possible. And then I was like, hang on, I just can't remake it. I'm not Respawn. I don't have the ability to make the same game as Respawn. What if I added something that never had existed? And then I thought, I was also playing a lot of Battlefield at the time, Battlefield 5 specifically. And I was like, what about destruction? What about the ability to blow up any part of the environment? How would that impact the gameplay? Because now, you completely have a dynamic environment when you play the game. You completely have, a game that works entirely differently with a completely dynamic environment. How would that actually play? And so that specifically was the origin story. We made our first development build in multiplayer within 10 days. So within 10 days of starting development, we had online multiplayer good to go. Our first in-person playtest that we did, we had two computers connected to each other via LAN, and that was it. There was literally a very simple setup like that. And they just played for 30, 40 minutes at a time each. And we were there and then, I'm like, this has never happened before with any of our projects. Clearly there's something here, that this combination is something that is really enticing. I wonder if we can take it further. That moment specifically was the first validation we had about Shatter Rush, and that has continued ever since. Like, that theme of people really engaging with the game, the content has been continuing ever since then.
How long has Shatter Rush been in development?
I think we first started mid-March last year. So 10 months,
Not bad.
I'd say. Yeah, we've been able to move really quickly. And that's only because I have so many lovely people around me that support me. I've obviously got my team. I've got the people outside my team that, mentors and whatnot. But I also have the player base who help give us feedback. We wouldn't have been able to make this ground so quickly if we didn't have a passionate player base who was just as interested as we are and just as passionate as we are about making a great game.
How has community feedback changed the game so far?
Every single thing about the game is because of community feedback. I mean, we're talking everything from the movement to the combat to the mechs. So fun fact, we were originally going to do mechs in the game. We were originally like, look, let's just focus on this one thing. Maybe we shouldn't do mechs. But the player feedback was so strong that we're like, we've got to give it a shot. And when we did introduce it, people just absolutely lost their minds. They absolutely couldn't believe it. And still is something that people lose their minds with. Every aspect of the game has changed because of community feedback. Every single thing, even things like split screen, because of community feedback. They really are the driving force of the game.
How can players give feedback in a way that actually gets used?
The more detail you give, the better. When we get, responses like movement sucks. Okay, that's not helpful to us at all. This is especially the case with bug reports. If you report a bug or an issue, you need to list exactly what you can do to make it happen reliably. Because if you can make it happen reliably, we can fix it reliably.
How do you hope people will play Shatter Rush?
This is harkening back to that social accessibility era of Halo. But Halo is described as one by there's a Vidoc in it with one of the original multiplayer designers of Combat Evolved, who describes Halo as a party game with guns. And likewise, in this type of game, it is actually quite party-like. It is very easy to get into. And you have all this really cool movement tech and all these systems and mechanics. But at the end of the day, it could always be treated as like a party game with guns at a very basic level. Obviously, as you get better, you can really take advantage of the movement system. But look, we just hope that players play Shatter Rush with their friends.
Do you feel like the term indie has changed over time?
Again, depends on your definition of an indie. If we're talking the definition I gave earlier, which is, smaller team, maybe 10 to 12 people max, maximum $5 to $10 million max, that hasn't changed. Maybe the amount of money has changed because of inflation, but there always has been, small teams and bigger teams. In fact, I would actually say that indie development has never been more accessible. Anyone can distribute their game by themselves without any external support, and they can become successful off that. In film and music, you have to have a distributor, you have to have a publisher, you have to have this other stuff, this other platforms and whatnot that make it really difficult for new people to break into it. The best way to describe it is that it has changed in terms of technical definition. No, it hasn't changed, but in terms of a consumer reception, it absolutely has changed from being, hey, this is like a little side project hobby thing that's on the Xbox Live Arcade to this stands on the shoulder of giants. This stands right next to the big releases. This is something that everybody can look forward to just as much as they would with a AAA release.
What does being an indie developer mean to you personally?
Creating, right? Indie development is all about creation. It's all about making stuff. It's all about having an impact on players. What does the indie developer mean to me personally? I think it just means creating. I think it just means having an impact on players, having an impact on people, and just creating art that people enjoy. That's what it really means.
What does the future look like for you?
Things are really ramping up with Shatter Rush. I mean, we've been getting a lot of traction recently. And so hopefully, the goal is to be able to expand the team further, to be able to accommodate for this. In terms of technical definitions, sure, hopefully we will change our technical definitions over time in terms of being an indie. But in terms of the actual execution and how we develop games, I hope that we don't.
Do you have a creator program?
Oh, we do. Look, we actually love supporting creators of all kinds, whether they've got 10 followers or whether they've got 100,000. Just join the Discord and drop your channel link, and one of the team members will see it and we'll get that process started. And working with small creators is actually so much fun. I'm not going to lie. It's really enjoyable to work with small creators. They're really passionate. They really care a lot. And so, of course, we want to work with those people. So, yeah, jump into our Discord server, and there's information inside the server on how to access that program.
So what is the one action you want viewers to take after watching this interview?
Go and play the game. If you've been watching this interview and you're like, wow, this game's awesome, go to our Steam page. We've got a free demo right now that you can play with full online multiplayer with your friends completely for free. We just ask for your feedback, and we need that feedback to make the game that you deserve. As well as that, just wishlisting the game helps a ton. If you enjoyed the demo, leaving a review helps us immensely as well.
So what is the next milestone you're working towards right now?
The next milestone we're working towards, as of recording right now, is that we are nearly in the top 1,000 most wishlisted games in the entirety of Steam. So we're about to hit that. By the time this video comes out, we probably would have hit it. But beyond that, we're looking forward to releasing the Gameplay 2.0 update. So I've teased it a little bit earlier. You've seen some world first footage there, but that is the update. We're going to be dropping that in early February. I can't wait for it. It's going to be awesome.
Any final thoughts that you want to leave viewers with?
It's a really awesome time to be a gamer, to be in the games industry. I think we see a lot of doom and gloom. We see a lot of issues online of people being like, oh, this sucks, this is bad, the industry's collapsing. No, I think we are currently actually living in, I would even say, a renaissance of indie games. We see so many small creators popping off online. We see so many more games being tried, so many different genres being tried, that it's so exciting to be a consumer of games as well as someone in the space creating. I think as well, one of the things that we're really looking forward to, and something that I really hope that people do from this interview, is that they just go play the game and give us feedback. We need the feedback. We need to try and make this game as good as possible. You guys have waited years and years for a movie shooter like this, and it's the game that you deserve, honestly.
Emerson, thank you again for joining us. This is Emerson once again from Tetra Studios on behalf of Shatter Rush, their up-and-coming title. Do you have anything you want to say to the audience?
Thank you for having me, and as well to anyone watching there, just please give us your feedback. We want to be able to make the best game possible. Let us know how we can do that, and we'll make sure it happens.
Love it. All right, once again, a huge thank you to Emerson for joining us today. Next up, we have James from Goldfire Studios showcasing Artic Awakening. Let's jump right on in. For anybody who's meeting you for the first time, who are you?
So my name's James Simpson. I'm the founder of Goldfire Studios. I'm based in Oklahoma City. Yeah, I've been making indie games for over 15 years now.
Before we dive into the game, I want to start with asking you the core question of the show. What is an indie?
Yeah, I mean, everyone has a different answer for what is an indie. I think it's kind of become a bit of a marketing buzzword in recent years. But for me, an indie really, it comes down to constraints. And, that can be different for different teams, for different games. But, constraints of team size, of budget, of access. And I think a lot of people look at indies and think, oh, there's no constraints on creativity. Which is kind of true, but I think the constraints are actually the key, like, secret sauce of indies, because the constraints are really what drive the creativity. And so without those constraints, you lose a little the magic that goes into indies, where these overlapping disciplines sort of meld in a way that you don't get with a bigger team.
That's a fantastic answer. I love it. Over the years, it feels like the definition has evolved or changed from developer to developer on indies. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's different for every person, and it's definitely become more of a marketing driven thing. But I don't know, from my perspective, having done it all this time, having met indies from all over the world, and running a meetup group, and talking to a lot of different indies of all different scales, I think. No matter what the definition is, there's that kind of indie spirit that's still just as strong or even stronger today than it's ever been. So I think that's what's exciting about being an indie dev and being part of the community.
What kind of meetup group have you created?
When we kind of first got started with Goldfire Studios, I didn't really know anyone locally that was doing game development. And so there was no intention to really start anything, but we just wanted to meet up. There was two of us in the studio at that time. And so we just posted on Twitter, hey, we're going to meet up with local game devs. And like 50 or 60 people showed up. And so that was back in 2013. And we've been doing monthly meetups pretty much ever since. And just, growing the game development community here in Oklahoma.
Now, for that, do you have anybody who travels from outside Oklahoma to these meetups?
Sometimes we've had people from Texas come. We've had speakers from like Unity or different places like that come and speak to the group. So it's been neat to sort of connect with people in other communities outside of our local city.
Now, when you do a meetup, is there any main goal that you have? Is it to network? Is it to problem solve? Is it just to get people out of their house so that way they're not just sitting in front of a computer screen 24/7?
Yeah, kind of all of those. Some meetups will be more like learning focused, or giving people an opportunity to talk on subjects that they wouldn't otherwise have a chance to. We try and do two like demo days each year, so people can show off the games they've been working on and get feedback. And then, of course, it's all about networking. We've got a Discord group that's really active, and people will collaborate through that, and we'll meet at the meetups. And then we'll also do kind of what we call hangouts, where we just go to, a restaurant or a bar and just hang out and meet other people in the community.
That's fantastic. It sounds like a really healthy way to just kind of be able to work through a funk if you were in one, or possibly, get a bunch of ideas on how to improve what you're working towards.
Yeah, and I think like that's one thing I've noticed is with indie games that or indie developers, they're all really open to sharing ideas and sharing what they've learned and helping out in whatever way they can. And so that's really what the group is about, and not just our group. I've been to a lot of others all over the place, and it's kind of the same thing everywhere.
Yeah, I remember getting to take part in a few of these during the Atlanta scene. They would usually get together whenever there was a convention going on. I know that like Anime Week in Atlanta would get together with a bunch of the indie developers, and they'd all just kind of talk about whatever they were working on project wise. And it just was a really great kind of like workshop scenario. It was a lot of fun to watch. What kind of game is Artic Awakening?
Artic Awakening, it's very much about the story. And it's a narrative adventure, first person. It's set in the Alaskan wilderness. So you play as Kai, who's an ex-Navy pilot. You've crash landed in the Arctic, and all you've got for company is a court-mandated therapy robot. So you go on a journey with this robot. You're searching for your missing co-pilot, but there's going to be various mysteries that you encounter along the way, and you might just discover you're not quite as alone out here as you might have assumed at the beginning.
In your own words, give me a few fun descriptors for Arctic Awakening.
I think what we've created is really it's a sci-fi adventure, but it's also a very relaxing experience. I mentioned that, one of the core characters is a court-mandated therapy robot. And so mental health and therapy is a core theme within the gameplay. There's a meditation mechanic that's a core part of the gameplay. And one really cool thing is we've seen a lot of people who do the breathing exercises in real life as they're playing the game. And so it's meant to simulate the isolation, but also be calming and sort of a relaxing escape from your daily life.
I mean, in today's day and age, mental health is so important. So I love that you added that. Arctic Awakening has a very specific atmosphere. How would you describe the experience you're aiming to create for players?
The atmosphere it's large, it's expansive, it's meant to put you in the shoes of Kai and experience what he's going through. There's no map, so you are lost, just like the character is lost, just like the robot you're with is lost as well. And so there's that element, but it's sort of a balance we've tried to create where, you're connecting with the characters, you're connecting with the story, and it's intentionally paced. So it's not something you're intended to just rush through. It's not something you're intended to beat, but it's more of an experience.
Finding a game that kind of just, it's like, well, let's pump the brakes and let's have a slow and great experience. I think it's something that's much needed right now. What makes Arctic Awakening an indie game beyond budget or team size?
Yeah, so obviously budget and team size are major factors of what makes something an indie. But for us, it's the fact that we really leaned into those constraints and used them as part of our creative process. And then by doing so, we were able to create this vision that's not dictated by anyone else. It's all of the decisions for that, all of the vision for that came from our core team, and we had the creative freedom. Even though we had those other constraints, we did have the creative freedom to pursue that goal, pursue that vision that we had, and bring it to completion and release it to players that were looking for that type of experience.
Now, to kind of sidebar with that, since you brought up a great point, when you as a team, being a smaller team, when you come across differing opinions on how you want to go about something, is there any practices that you guys have for kind of working through that type of like directional choice that you make?
Well, I guess there's two things to that. First of all, with this project in particular, our kind of guiding principle was what we call story first. And so that was our core pillar. And so we really used that as our filter. Anything that was going to go into the game, if it was a feature, if it was a level design element, a mechanic, whatever it might have been, if it wasn't doing something to support or move the story forward, then it didn't belong in the game. So that as an initial filter helped resolve most of those things right out of the gate. But beyond that, generally it just comes down to prototyping. If you really believe in a mechanic or a feature or some element, create a quick prototype. We've got the freedom to just do that. Each person's work isn't being like tightly dictated, and that's kind of a freedom we have as indies. And so make a quick prototype, prove that it belongs in the game, and then we get buy-in from the rest of the team.
I love that. That's a great way of just kind of getting everybody's feedback and then just proving whether, something belongs there or not. Where can people play Arctic Awakening or follow along with your development right now?
So, yeah, we had a goal to make the game available in as many places as possible. So it's on PC and Mac on both Steam and Good Old Games, as well as PlayStation 5 and Xbox. And hopefully it will be coming to Switch 2 later this year, but nothing to reveal on that quite yet. We've got a Discord, we've got Twitter and Blue Sky and our newsletter are all great places to follow along for updates. Twitter, it's at Artic Awakening. Blue Sky, it's at goldfirestudios.com. And then Discord is just discord.gg/goldfire.
What can people expect next from the project or the studio?
So on Artic Awakening, we've mostly been focused on addressing bugs, which is mostly addressed at this point. But a big request from people has been a photo mode and a free roam mode to be able to capture the huge expansive environments that we've created. And so that's something that's in the works and will be coming later this year. And we're also in the early stages working on a new project. Don't have anything to reveal on that yet, but hopefully it's something we'll be able to talk about in the next couple months.
How did you personally end up here working on Artic Awakening?
So we finished our last game, which was Exocraft, in 2019, and we had always done multiplayer games up to that point, and we were trying to figure out what we wanted to work on next. And we'd always had a passion for storytelling, and we'd always felt like games could be this like ultimate storytelling medium. But we never really felt like our studio had the resources and the experience to really go down that route until we'd gotten to that point. And so we started getting really inspired to take on that challenge of really diving into a more narrative first game.
Did you originally set out to be an indie developer or studio, or did that just kind of evolve over time?
I'd say it kind of just evolved. I started making games when I was in middle school, just for fun, just as a hobby. And then it started morphing more into a business as I got into school. And then I officially founded Goldfire Studios and started just kind of organically building a team once I had gotten out of school. And then it's just steadily grown from there. So I wouldn't say it was some master plan, but it's been an exciting ride nonetheless.
Why did this path make sense for you as becoming an indie developer?
For me, growing up, I was always interested in, I guess, all of the different aspects, all of the different art forms that go into games. And I just couldn't really see myself picking one and sticking to that. And so for me, that's what's so fun about indie dev is, one week you can be doing programming, and then another you're working on art or UI or game design or storytelling. And so you get to kind of explore all of these different disciplines in one project, which keeps it fresh.
What has it been like building a long-term sustainability for Goldfire Studios?
So it's definitely changed how we've approached things. We've had to keep in mind, every project we've done has been funded from the previous project. And so obviously that's made growth slower, but it's allowed us to be more intentional with our projects. And it's just another one of those constraints that I talked about being so key for an indie. It really forces us to be more creative with the projects that we make. It's been working thus far. We're over a decade into it at this point, and still chugging along so far. So
from your experience, what skills does an indie developer absolutely need?
I think the most critical skill for an indie developer is adaptability, or being able to learn on the fly, basically. So every project is different. Every week is different. You're always needing to solve different problems. And so the one skill you need to be able to pull that off, you can't know everything. And so you need to know how to then go pick up new skills as you're going to be able to solve any challenge that you come across throughout your development.
What's a skill you didn't expect to rely on so much as you do now?
I suppose time management is maybe not the first like indie dev skill you think about, but without good time management and project management, you're just never going to finish and ship your game, which obviously is the ultimate goal of making a game in the first place.
Tell me Goldfire's origin story with Artic Awakening.
Yeah, so we had just finished our previous game, and we were trying to figure out what we wanted to do, and we'd always focused on multiplayer. And At that time, it's when like Fortnite was really taking off, and multiplayer was seemingly the entire focus of the industry at this point. And so we decided we wanted to do a 180 and go single player. And a big driver of that is this wasn't completely out of left field. We've always tried to put some form of storytelling into our games, but we really wanted to focus on that much more significantly with this project.
What were your inspirations for the game?
Really, what we wanted to accomplish with this game is taking kind of the format of a TV miniseries, but doing it in a way that you can only do as a video game. And so, right off the bat, we were inspired by things like Lost, X-Files, Breaking Bad, Westworld, and then beyond TV, we're obviously inspired by, many great narrative games like Firewatch, Life is Strange, or any of the Telltale games.
How long was Artic Awakening in development for?
So a lot longer than we expected, but that's kind of par for the course with game development. We started actual development on the game shortly before all the COVID stuff happened. So it took a little over 5 years to complete the game.
Do you feel that COVID had a large impact on the whole isolation theme of the game?
That's an interesting question. I don't know that it directly changed how we developed the story, but I suspect it changed how people connect with the story. Having gone through that, and even though it's not the same thing, there's kind of this shared isolation experience that a lot of people went through, and so I think it's easier to connect with what Kai is going through with the story than maybe it would have been pre-COVID.
How many games has Goldfire Studios produced so far?
So Artic Awakening technically would be our 5th title, although I think you could argue it's our first in many senses. It was our first single-player game, our first 3D game, first game in Unity, first console game, and also our first premium title game. So that's part of why it took a lot longer than we anticipated. There was a lot to learn. It was kind of starting from scratch in a lot of sense, even though we'd all had quite a bit of experience making games before that.
You think that switching gears and going to a more narrative-based game, do you think it refreshed everybody as a developer to kind of do something new, something fresh, something different than what you have already been working on?
Yeah, and I think that's kind of a theme for us is every game we've done has been very different from the previous one. And I suppose that's probably another element that led into this one is we'd been doing multiplayer games for a long time. The challenge didn't really feel like it was there anymore moving forward, at least for that time period. And so, what keeps it fresh and exciting is having new challenges, new things to learn, new things to try that sort of stretch the creative muscle. And so that's what was exciting for us. And it was definitely, a fresh burst of creativity that got us going.
How do you hope players will engage with Artic Awakening?
The game is very intentionally paced. And so personally, I hope people take their time with the game. It's split into 5 episodes, very specifically so that you can go at your own pace. You don't have to play through it all in one sitting. You're, of course, more than welcome to, but I think you get the most out of it if you spread it out over time, if you are able to reflect on it as you go through and think about what's happening and think about what could be coming next, and be able to spend more time, not necessarily in the game itself, but more time spread out with the characters, so that you can really get to know those characters and feel like you have a connection with those characters. Because for us, the reason we were so interested in inspirations that were series was because you really connect with those characters over time, and you really start to feel like those are real people or characters, and their experiences actually happen. And so that's what's really kind of powerful about that type of storytelling. And so that was really our goal with Arctic Awakening.
If players remember one thing about Arctic Awakening, what do you hope it is?
I would really hope players remember the characters and their connection to those characters and how that made them feel, as opposed to just remembering the plot points or the actions that the game asked you to perform at different points throughout the game. And it's a game that asks a lot of questions. It answers most of those questions if you're paying attention, but some of them are left somewhat vague on purpose because we really want to encourage debate and thought and a feeling that this world is still existing beyond the final credits rolling.
We started this conversation with your definition of an indie. Has that definition changed over the course of developing Arctic Awakening?
I think the biggest change that I've noticed is it's become more of this marketing buzzword. It feels like there's been some contention over that, but I think at the end of the day, for me, for us, it just comes back to those constraints. If you're using those constraints to your advantage to be able to be more creative and more nimble than a bigger studio could be, then that's really what it comes down to being an indie.
What does being an indie developer mean to you today?
I think to pinpoint it even more is it comes down to specialization. If everyone in the studio has very specialized roles, you're probably not an indie at that point. And the reason for that is there's some sort of magic that happens when people in an indie studio, whether it's a solo dev or it's a 10-person team, where you're working on different things that are completely seemingly unrelated. Again, it could be art and programming and sound, and that overlap of different disciplines ends up leading to outcomes that just organically wouldn't generally happen in a larger studio where everyone is kind of siloed, where they're specialized on their specific role. And so I think for me, that's what really makes indie games fun to develop, because you have that opportunity to work in all those different areas. But also for the players, and most indie devs are players as well, it's fun to there's just something you can feel it in the game itself that it's been developed in a different way, and it's that overlap that creates something different and fresh and unique that you're not used to seeing from the bigger budget games.
Do you consider Goldfire an indie studio? Do you want to stay in indie long term?
So yeah, I would definitely consider us to be indie. We're 4 to 5 person core team. We've always been self-funded and self-published, and we've always had that creative freedom to take on the projects that we wanted, and everyone on the team always wears multiple hats, so there's always this kind of cross-pollination going on. As far as for the future, I think it's we would love to keep doing this. At the end of the day, it comes down to the players. If they keep wanting the games that we're making and are interested in the ideas that we come up with, then we're more than excited to keep doing that as long as we can.
What does the future look like for you and the studio?
Yeah, I wish I had a crystal ball.
Don't we all?
We of course want to grow more, but I think there's a limit to that, right? Like, we enjoy that ability to work on different things and be very fluid with what we're working on. And so I think there's a sweet spot there where we can still maintain that, but we can work on games. I think part of the problem that we've had that really shown through with Arctic Awakening is we tend, or maybe I shouldn't put it on the rest of the team, I as a director tend to kind of bite off more than I can chew at times, and like to go for these larger experiences that are kind of outsized for a 4-person indie studio. And so, personally, it would be nice to grow the studio a little more and be able to tackle some of those bigger ideas that have us excited. But We're also excited about working on smaller projects as well, and just keeping it, fresh and doing new things all the time.
I'll be definitely cheering for you guys. Now, my next question for you: do you have a creator program?
So we don't have a formal creator program, but we've worked with plenty of creators in the past, and we're always happy to work with more. You can just reach us at hello@goldfirestudios.com, and we've got keys and other resources to help you make some great content.
What's the one action you want from viewers to take after this interview?
Yeah, I mean, the game is available on Steam, Xbox, and PlayStation 5. It's available now. You can go play it. You can wishlist it for the future, or you can follow us on socials, Discord, and our newsletter. You can find links for all of that at arcticawakening.com.
Any final thoughts you would want to leave with players or aspiring indie devs?
Like, indie devs are, at any scale, are people that are really, really passionate about games and want to make games for the players that they enjoy. And they're only able to do that through the support of players that, on the other side of that, buy their games, play their games, spread the word about their games. Indie devs don't have the big push that, AAA games have with their big marketing budgets and all of that. So it really comes down to the community and supporting one another. And that's true within indie dev itself, supporting other developers, but also with players. If you enjoy indie games, go let the developer know. It's a person. They've poured a lot of time into that. Just message them on Twitter, on their Discord, leave a review, all of those things. Every indie dev that I know looks at that stuff, really appreciates that stuff. It's really helpful just for motivation, and indie dev it's kind of a roller coaster as you go through the development process. And so those things, beyond just seeing people playing your game, those kind of elements of support are really helpful to all indie developers out there.
I want to thank James for coming out from Goldfire Studios and talking to us today about Artic Awakening. It's been an absolute pleasure. Do you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, just thank you so much for putting this together. Indies don't have as many opportunities for visibility and just showing what they're working on. So it's really great having indie-focused events like this.
Well, we hope this won't be our last conversation. Hopefully we get to talk about your next upcoming projects soon.
Absolutely.
Once again, a huge thank you to James for joining us today. Next up, we have Ian from Sunspear Games showcasing Immortal, Gates of Pyre. It's RTS time.
I am salvation!
Steel yourself for judgment.
So, let's start off with who you are.
My name's Ian Hunt. I'm one of the co-founders here at Sunspear Games. We've been working for about 8 years now on RTS projects. We started out doing some design consultation stuff, but we really always had a vision to basically create the next generation of RTS. I do a lot of the kind of business operation side, so I've been dealing with fundraising, HR, finance, all that sort of stuff over the years, so that there's kind of some space for the rest of these incredibly talented designers to create an incredible experience. I do tiptoe into the creative space every now and then, especially when it comes to map making. My father was a cartographer, and I always grew up loving maps, and so yeah, the world atlases and stuff like that. I do have my fingers on that, but for the most part, I love helping to build the overall team.
Now, a sidebar question.
Mhm.
When you play a game that doesn't have a map, does that bother you at all?
It depends. I would say at points in the past I've been somewhat judgmental. I feel like I'm okay these days at appreciating games for what they're good at, right? Some games have stronger lore, some games have stronger characters, some games have stronger writing. I will say that weak voice acting still bothers me a bit in games. I think that's a little bit of the acting background. If there's not a map, I don't get super perturbed, but when there's a great map, it is actually one of the highlights of the game for me. So when I have a really beautifully executed map where I can zoom in on locations and read history about places, stuff like that, I just love it.
What kind of game is Immortal Gates of Pyre?
Immortal's an RTS. It's an RTS with some elements of MOBA, some elements of other adjacent genres, but at its core, it's an RTS, right? A real-time strategy game is, to me, any game where you are commanding an army in real time, building armies, commanding armies, building bases, all at the same time. And traditionally, RTS has been a very challenging genre for people to play, and certainly for people to get onboarded into, right? Some of the great legacy RTSs, for a long time it was very dominant, partly because people put the time into developing their skills and mastering those games, right? They loved going through the campaigns, the characters, the worlds that were built out, and it was really, really engaging and satisfying. It has been more of a challenge lately. So the vision with Immortal was to modernize the RTS genre, to take the core lessons that are so satisfying about RTS, right? There's something really, really enjoyable about commanding an army, being Aragon at the gates of Mordor, right? Having that I'm this heroic leader,
100%.
and having that experience that other genres of game just do not give you, right? MOBA, it's much more about character and micro and things, but there's not the same grandeur, spectacle, scope, scale, right, in other genres. But people got burnt out on how challenging it was. And so what we wanted to do is we wanted to see if we could keep all the depth, the tactical depth, the ability for high skill players to have this big play potential where they could be, splitting armies and microing armies while producing troops, while having these big play moments, right? Esports worthy stuff, not because it has to be an esport, but just because that spectacle is exciting, right? Can we do that, and make it much more accessible without compromising that top end complexity? And what we ultimately determined is yes, we could. And most of it had to do with opt in complexity. In other words, having the game do certain things for you, or having the UI and UX work for you rather than against you, um, but still giving you the ability to toggle on and off, for example, worker production. So workers in our game are automatically produced, but you can turn that off. So if you're trying to do a specific timing attack, save a few extra resources and try to get a slight early advantage to attack something, right? You can opt into that, but then it becomes a choice. So we looked for all of these marginal gains, 1% improvements, right? Maybe 80 of them. And in doing so, we think we created a product that's significantly better than what has come out on the market in the past years in this space.
What makes Immortal an indie?
That term has really, I don't know, become kind of nebulous, right? I would definitely consider ourselves an indie, both because of the team size. We're currently around 30 people, so we're a relatively small team compared to the double A's and triple A's of the industry, compared to the budget and what we're looking at in terms of the overall production, right? Under $10 million. So it's a relatively small game in that capacity. But I also think that part of what makes a game an indie has to do with its soul, its heart, its purpose a little bit, right? Our team came out of the modding community. It was very much a community project. In the early days, doing Vanguard and doing these other projects, Starbow in StarCraft 2, we were looking for ways to improve experiences for players. And we were doing it for free as volunteers, right? Then we said it's clear that most of the big game developers in this space aren't going to pick up that mantle and build something new, build something that modern players want. We have done over 1,000 pages of lore writing. We have 3 planets, dozens of civilizations, and like within each civilization, within Jorah, for example, I think there's 27 individual states. Think of them like US states, and we've written about every single state. Why spend all of that time? Why spend all of that focus there, right? Just cut corners. You can just call it the West Country versus East Country and call it good, right? Send it out. It's an RTS. They're little guys. People aren't going to have that emotional connection to them. But to us, it was about creating something that we were really proud of, something that players wanted to be a part of, a universe they wanted to explore, to learn about. We didn't want to cut corners. Was that correct? I don't know, but I think it's a very indie attitude. The vision is about creating something for the community to really love.
What is an indie game to you?
I think that we see, like, obviously indie, it's got a bit to do with the size, the team, the scope, the budget, but I think players think of it more in terms of the product, the bureaucracy, and the purpose, right? I think that's why we see sometimes people referring to Larian or Arrowhead as indie studios, even though they're relatively large, is because they recognize that they like what we would consider an indie game to be, really didn't cut corners and focused on quality and wanted to create something great for players. An indie game or an indie studio to me is one that is looking to create experiences for players, for communities, and really is obsessing over what sort of experience they can provide, not whether or not this is the most lucrative or the smartest direction to go.
Where can people play Immortal or follow along with the development right now?
It's on Steam. You can wish list it. We do pretty regular playtests. So we'll open it up to the whole community. If you wish list the game, you'll get notifications. We've got 1v1, 2v2, and co op modes in the game right now. We're getting started on the campaign modes. And then we've also got Discord. So you can look for Immortal Gates of Pyre Discord. That's probably the best way to follow all of the updates. You can also follow us on standard social media, but Discord is probably where we have the most information. And if you're curious about, say, diving into the lore and things like that, we've got specific channels for all of your curiosities and needs.
What can players expect next from the game?
We're currently working on kind of 3 key pillars at the moment. One, we're working on the 3rd faction, Jorah. It's getting pretty close to a point that we're going to put it into the hands of playtesters, let them play around with it. Obviously, it's still a ways off from final polish, but we want to give it to players pretty soon. The internal playtesters that have been playing with Jorah really, really love it. A lot of folks are saying it's going to become their favorite faction. So we want to get into the hands of playtesters as soon as possible. Probably a few months out from that. It'll depend on some factors, but we'll see how it goes. Other thing we're doing is we're working on general polish. Right, there's still a fair bit of animations, VFX, maps, and things like that still need some polish work. So we're taking care of some of that. And then the third thing is we're getting started on the campaign. That's a bit further out, probably 6 months or so before you can really see a bunch of updates on that. But we're excited to get to it.
What do you personally love about the RTS games?
I've kind of alluded to it earlier, but it's that huge... It's the stakes, it's the scope, it's the sense of not just a character but a civilization. It's also the stories, right, that emerge from that. I enjoy RTS games. I also like 4X games, right? I like these stories of how a civilization, how a faction engages ideologically or militaristically with various other factions. RTS really is one of the best genres to tell stories about civilizations, I think, right? It's much more personal, much more engaged than, say, a 4X game. And the fact that you're controlling all of these units, not just a single unit, helps make you feel like you're a part of that whole community.
You spent time modding games. How did that shape the way you think about game design?
I think modding games is such a valuable way for anyone to learn about game design. I think it's also really valuable to learn about working in a team, right? One of the great things about modding communities is it's all volunteers. You're surrounded by people that are incredibly passionate, but the only way to motivate them is to inspire them with your vision, right? Because it's volunteer. And so you learn how to kind of put ego aside a little bit and focus on creating the best possible product and resolving conflicts and testing, right? One of the things that modding really teaches you is iterative testing because you're in the community already, right? I forget who told me this. I think it's an adage in the industry that's pretty well known, but it's like one bad idea that didn't get into your game is worth 10 good ideas that did. So we would also celebrate when something was tested and failed. We'd be like, woo, I'm so glad we tested that. It didn't work. We're really glad that we don't have to check and see if that is something we should be doing, right? Like that made the game that much better because now we know, and we're not going to put it in just on a whim because one of the co-founders thought it was a good idea. I had plenty of those ideas in my early days. I probably was the worst idea monger of the group because I would consider myself the worst of us as designers. But that was really, really satisfying and it was so exciting to test those ideas and watch the product come together in the best possible way.
How did you end up working on Immortal?
Dylan is one of my co-founders, and he and I went to college together. I still remember I was working for another company, doing sales and marketing. I was at a trade show or something. I was in Boston, and I was standing out in front of my hotel room, and Dylan was just chatting at me down my cell phone for hours about this idea that he had and how excited he was to do it. And you know, we knew each other for a while. We also hung out in some modding communities and stuff like that. But that's when he really said, "No, this is what we should do." And this, you know, we've been trying to convince Blizzard to make these changes for StarCraft 3. I don't think they're going to make StarCraft 3. Let's go raise money. Let's go try to build this thing. To which, of course, I told him, well, you're crazy. No, I'll help where I can, and let's talk to some people. And one of the things that happened is we talked to people in the industry, and this was very much during kind of the rise of mobile gaming and stuff like that. There were a lot of people in the industry that were so hungry for something like that, right? That were just excited. They wanted that passion again, right? They felt like the industry was becoming stagnant. It's a tale as old as time. It feels like people keep griping about the same things, which fair enough. But yeah, we basically got really encouraged to take on this ambitious, crazy idea to try to build a double A competitive RTS game in a genre that investors don't want to finance and publishers don't want to publish, and to just try to fight our way through it on sheer force of will and the strength of the belief that this is something that the community and the world needs and deserves.
Did you originally set out to be an indie developer?
No, I mean, I originally set out to be an actor. Something with a similarly low success rate. Dropped out of college during the Great Recession. Started doing entrepreneurial startups, originally with family, and then beyond. And then, yeah, I got brought into, like, I enjoyed doing modding. I enjoyed doing game development, and I was a gamer, but always doing it as a hobby. And it wasn't kind of until that conversation with Dylan, and then we started going to GDCs. We started getting connected to advisors and people that would go on to become executives and coworkers of ours. And little by little, I think I've been to 9 GDCs and 8 Gamescoms now. But I love it, and now I don't particularly want to leave. But I really enjoy the people here and the vision and purpose that they have.
What advice would you give developers seeking out funding?
Make sure when you are talking to VCs or publishers that you are clarifying the vision for what they are getting out of it. how much money are they going to make, why it's a sure thing. Try to bring them metrics, try to bring them as much as you possibly can to make them feel safe
How do you hope people will play Immortal?
in whatever way they want to. We want them to be able to have fun doing PvP or doing some co-op casual games with your buddy and a beer, or having an in-depth story. We want you to be able to have all of those experiences, but love being in command of an army and telling that story.
What emotions do you want players to feel while playing?
Powerful, engaged, curious, excited.
If players remember one thing about Immortal, what do you hope it is?
A quote that we get a lot from especially younger players, college students, people that haven't really played RTS before is,
Mhm.
"Oh, this is an RTS? This is great."
How do you balance long development cycles with staying relevant in the fast moving market?
Community. As you keep developing, you keep the community engaged, you keep them involved, and you keep listening to them, making sure that what you're building is what they want.
From your experience, what skills does an indie developer truly need?
Curiosity, willingness to keep learning. One of the things I find in this industry is you don't need to scale as much as you think you do. What you need is to learn. Um, a small team that is incredibly skilled can produce incredible results. So focus on constantly educating yourself, learning new tools, learning new systems. So I think that's one of the absolute most important things, and also making sure that you've got somebody on the team who is pretty good at the business side of things, both in terms of operations and project management and in terms of fundraising.
What skills surprised you the most in terms of how important it became for you?
Communication 100%, like within the team, communicating externally and communicating with the community, communicating with publishers and everybody else. But there's a, I think it's a Eugene O'Neill quote. The greatest problem in communication is the assumption that it has taken place. And it is so true. Reading books on communication and focusing on how we communicated as a unit changed the speed and execution, even the quality of ideas and everything else that we did. Some of those kind of soft skills, like self-help book skills and stuff like that, that we make fun of from time to time. Oh boy, they are actually really valuable if you're going to try to make company.
Do you feel like the term indie has changed during your time in development?
Yes, I actually do. I feel like bigger and bigger teams are taking the
Mhm.
indie mantle. When we started, indie was a little bit more niche and sometimes was kind of being used to describe lower quality. And that's very much not the case anymore. Now it feels more like a cultural point about the studio, about the culture of the studio, about the purpose, and about especially how they communicate with their fans and their community.
What does being an indie developer mean to you personally today?
I love it. It feels like fighting the good fight in a way, right? Um, not that there's a war, so to speak, but there are so many great ideas and great experiences within gaming that still haven't been created that I can't even begin to imagine. I think it's really exciting to be an indie developer and fighting for, yeah, us growing that pie and creating more and more experiences that people 20 years from now look back on and think, wow, that game really transformed my life.
Do you want to remain a indie long term? What does the future look like for you?
I think so. I think so. Early on, we might have had ideas about becoming a bigger studio because there is that excitement of, man, if we were a bigger studio, we could work on multiple projects, we could do these much more ambitious big projects. I think now with the time I've had in the industry, I'm going, I actually don't think I want a studio bigger than 50, 60 people. I want everybody to know everybody. I want everyone to feel connected, especially with modern tooling and modern engines and stuff like that. A small team can really create incredible stuff. I like the moral compass, and the purpose that we have as a company, and and I'd like to keep that. And I want to always focus on creating games and experiences that are meaningful to players.
Do you have a creator program?
We have a number of creators, streamers, and RTS pros that have created a lot of content with us. We sometimes do tournaments with some of our partners. So by all means, if you're interested, we've got special tags for you guys in the Discord. That's generally the best way to get a hold of us. If this is your cup of tea, if this is something that you want to bring to your community, then please get in touch with us. Reach out to us on Discord.
What is the one action you want viewers, creators, developers to take after watching this?
Everyone should remember that these systems, indie game development, right? These creative projects and these sorts of visions, they only exist with support, right? Without fans, without content creators, without community members, and often without funding, this whole part of the industry would more or less dry up. It's something that I think can be a little easy to take for granted. And as we are in a space at the moment where the attention economy is so oversaturated at the moment, thousands of indie studios, actually, I think over 10,000, have gone under in the last 3-4 years after the last major industry contraction that started kind of late 2021 at the end of COVID, and still hasn't really fully recovered just yet, right? So if this is something that you're passionate about as a fan, as a community member, as a content creator, reach out, find projects, find teams that you believe in, build a team that people believe in. Get involved, because the more you're involved, the more you secure that these ideas and that this industry will continue to survive.
Are there any final thoughts you want to leave players or aspiring indie devs with?
Getting into becoming an indie dev, especially if you're starting out, is hard. I often refer to it as you're walking through a valley of fire for the first 5 years. I can almost guarantee you won't get money. I can almost guarantee you a lot of things are going to go wrong. But if you stick with it, if you learn, if you keep showing up, right, even when it's hard, you will get to a point that you will have the connections, you will have the skills. Don't give up. A lot of people give up because they have a great idea for a game, and probably is a great idea, something super cool, and then for 2 years they just lose money and they get burnt out and they quit. And I get that, right? Our team's dealt with burnout. We've struggled with money, right? These things happen, and it's a common reality for indie developers. But if you push through that point, there is always a future. So if this is what you're passionate about, don't give up just because you kind of get knocked back a few times. Don't be afraid to ask for help. I think you'll find that it's a pretty wholesome industry when it comes to helping people who ask.
Ian, thank you again for joining us. Once again, this was Sunspear Games with Immortal Gates of Pyre. Thank you again for joining us today.
Oh, thank you so much, Jesse. I really had a good time chatting with you about it, and I'm really excited for this program that you guys are doing. I love that you're talking to indie developers and shining more light on, I mean, kind of like this light, but just like the sun here, you're shining a lot of light on indie developers, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how this series plays out. So thank you guys so much for taking the time.
All right, once again, a huge thank you to Ian for joining us today. Next up, we have Spencer from YummyYummyTummy showcasing not one, but two great games. We've got Robo Frenzy and Table Flip Simulator. Let's jump right on in. For anybody meeting you for the first time, who are you?
Hey, I'm Spencer. I'm the director of YummyYummyTummy. We're an indie game studio, which means everyone on the team wears a lot of hats. So sometimes I'm programmer, sometimes I'm designer, sometimes I'm janitor. And our team, we're making some pretty silly games coming up. We're making this game called Robo Frenzy, which is a boss battling game where you create shareable boss battles. We're making Table Flip Simulator, a game where you can rage out in everyday life situations.
I want to start with the core question of the show. What is an indie?
I think it means different things for different people. For some gamers, indie games means something that's like very creator focused. Like one big difference with indie teams is usually you have a smaller group of people, so the vision of the game is more clear. Like it's really that pure vision of of that group of creators. While some other people look at it from just like a perspective, like is a studio that's not run by like a big corporation or something like that. But I think for most people, they're looking for games that are innovative and creative, something that's different, something that you won't see out like the mainstream.
My next question for you is, what games did you bring to the show today?
Yeah, we're working on two games now. One of them is Table Flip Simulator. This is a game. It's a physics power destruction game where you pick up and throw items and break stuff, and of course flip tables and in everyday life situations. In one level, you're making coffee as a barista. In another level, you're working at a grocery store, and you're going all the way like to become the president of Antarctica.
I feel like those are some very drastic, changes.
It's your hero's journey. Yeah, and throughout the game, we're also making Robo Frenzy. It's a boss battling game where players make shareable boss battles. So you're fighting like this giant T-Rex dinosaur robot over here, and then after you beat it, you can equip it with parts, make it breathe fire or make it shoot missiles, and you can give that boss to your friend to battle.
Now, have you had anybody create like something that's just completely thrown you off, that you just did not expect this to be your boss encounter?
It happens all the time. Like I think, especially like in some of our internal play tests, like we make bosses for each other to fight, and there have definitely been some that became nerfed because we realized the combination was too powerful. Like bosses that can drop bombs that can ignite them from far away. Like, yeah, there are definitely some that we found out, but I think that's like the fun of it and the surprise of the game too. Game to make over 1 billion possible bosses, and we're looking forward to seeing what possibilities are out there.
That's a large combination list.
I think one of the fun parts is the many ways you can destroy levels. There are lots of secrets to find. Every time we flip the table, there are many different physics powered comedy things that happen. Like it's also fun too, because sometimes even when we're playing it, we discover things that we didn't realize you could do too. Like there's a level that takes place in an office, like a typical office building, like skyscraper office building. And in this level, your boss wants you to work overtime on the weekend, and we
hate that.
Exactly. And like the goal is to like to delay the boss for 3 minutes so you can sneak out and like not have to stay on the weekend. And we discovered by mistake that if you throw the boss out the window, you push him out the window, that you can avoid you can beat the level that way. And we just at first we're like, is this a bug or is this a feature? Because it was just so funny to do, so we just kept it in.
It's definitely a feature. At this point, it has to be a feature. Do you lose out on pay by like throwing the boss out the window? Like, are you gonna get ridden up?
So at the end of every table flip similar level, there's like a receipt that comes up. It's a bill of all the stuff you destroyed, and it gives you. So the more things you destroy, the more points you get. So, but we didn't put any points on knocking out people because human life is priceless. But breaking computers, breaking office furniture, that's all part of your score.
So you have weight behind all the items that you can throw?
Yeah.
And that'll affect how far you can throw something or someone?
In an early version of the game, it did affect how far you would throw things, but we realized that players really want to be able to throw stuff and break things. So, it's possible that a coffee cup can break a car, but when you throw a car and you push something like that, that will determine like how far something else flies. We kind of went through like a balancing phase, like when we're testing the game out, where to see like what players wanted. Before there was a more complicated like weight power bar system, but then we saw players really just want to break stuff, and so we like recoded the game to be in favor of that.
With your definition of indie in mind, what makes YummyYummyTummy an indie studio?
I think for us, it's definitely making games that are creative and different. Like we're aiming to make games that aren't on the marketplace. We want to make games for different audiences and to give different experiences. I mean, there are so many great Metroidvanias. There's some amazing JRPGs. They're awesome action games. Like we want to make something that doesn't exist, that goes beyond the like what we see as traditional games.
Now, a question for you about your studio. How many people work on the games?
We have two teams, like all together, it's about 12, 13 people that are split across like both titles.
Pretty darn awesome. And how many games have you released as a studio?
For console games, we've released 4 now. Before that, we also had released a couple like mobile titles, like when we were just getting started.
How does that work for y'all? Are you able to manage basically balancing two different teams, two different projects at the same time?
It's 2 projects at the same time. I think one difference is my background is more of an engineer, and like I look at a shared code base, and I think one great part, especially with our other titles too, that we have a code base that we build on top of, and we use the code from one project to the next. Like once we have player input, we can use it for everything. Once we have like a perfect block system, which came from Fallen Legion, we can use that in Robo Frenzy. And being able to have this shared code base allows us to work on more projects and to add gameplay depth to them too.
Do you use the same engine across the board?
Yeah, we've been using Unity for a long time.
Where can people play or follow along with these projects right now?
Right now, both Table Flip Simulator and Robo Frenzy are going to come to Steam, and like if you guys can wishlist those games, we'll be super grateful. We have a TikTok channel at YYT Games. We're definitely looking to bring our games to consoles too, so stay tuned for that.
How do wish lists help affect your games and projects that you're working on?
I think not just for us, but for all developers. Like it's one of these like catch-22s where we live in a world of algorithms now. And before, I think one of the things is different. Like just like talking to you, Bear, we would live in a world where people would tell other people about games, like whether that would be like IGN or watching like a Twitch stream with your favorite creator. But unfortunately, now for a lot of developers, whether you're releasing on the App Store, you're releasing on Steam, or even if you're releasing on like a console platform, everything is based on an algorithm. Like the Switch top 40 list is an algorithm. Steam's an algorithm. So basically anything to help get those numbers up helps give developers more visibility for their titles. So if you like a game, one of the best things you can do for developers to wishlist it, or if later on like telling other creators and telling other people about it, because it's really right now the biggest challenge is visibility just across all platforms and on social media.
What can players expect next in the future for you?
I think just next month we're going to bring Table Flip Simulator to everyone for the first time. We brought it to a couple shows before, like at GDC and Level Up Expo, but Table Flip Simulator is going to be in Steam Next Fest, and we're really looking forward to seeing everyone, try the game out, to destroy a coffee shop, to break down a department store, and yeah, like please let us know like what you think about the game, like when it's on Steam Next Fest next month.
How did you end up making games like this?
Of course, I think everyone that makes games loves playing games. And when I was a kid, I just didn't know it was possible to be a game developer. It just seemed like one of those like far away magical careers, probably similar to being like Willy Wonka or something at that point. I wanted to do something in the game industry, so I started in the media side. And fortunately, like I have an engineering background. So as I continued to meet different game careers, I started to think, huh, there are more tools now that we just didn't have available before. I mean, before we just have like a simple compiler, right? And there wasn't really a way to release your game. You have to sell it at like GameStop or something like that, and you need to have so many different agreements. But now there's just new paths for creators to actually create games that we can distribute digitally through Steam. More publishers are willing to work with indie developers. We have better engine technology, and I thought, let's give it a shot.
Do you feel like it's necessary at this point in being an indie developer to get your game out to as many platforms as possible? Or do you feel like it would be worthwhile for somebody to stick to one platform and just put everything into that?
I feel like there's some game genres that work better on certain platforms than others. Like platformers are a good example. I grew up as a console gamer, so of course I played platformers and stuff like that. But on PC, like playing a platform with keyboard and mouse just didn't feel right. So for a long time, like that genre wasn't that available on PC platforms. While there are other genres like RTSs that feel great with keyboard and mouse that kind of don't feel so natural on with the controller. So it really depends like what type of game you're making.
What's your all-time favorite game?
That is a tough one. My daughter actually asked this question to me a bunch of times. She's gone into games, and she plays a lot of them. It's tough because I think games have changed so much from platform to platform. Like if we look at an all-time favorite on like NES or Genesis, the scope and the scale of the game and what made that game amazing back then might not hold a candle to the games we have today. To be fair to those games, but we also like built the games we had today because those games were so great and they inspired us so much, right? So to be fair to this, I'll just try to look at like what games I like a lot from last year. And I was playing Cuisenaire a lot. It's games kind of like Hades meets Diner Dash. I was played Just Crow Things. It's a game where you're a mischievous crow, just destroying stuff. I played Pokemon ZA. That was great. I played Unicorn Overlord. It's like this like RTS ish strategy JRPG.
Now, these games that you mentioned, have they influenced some of your ideas that you've added to your games?
I think every game adds some influence to it. I mean, probably most directly with Just Crow Things, since we ended up having a crossover with Just Crow Things after like talking with the creator, like Tablecon from Table Flip Simulator. He's hidden in the game, and there might be a character from Just Crow Things hidden in our game if you're like really searching for him.
Do indie developers normally do nods like this to other games that they've worked with in the past?
I think so. I mean, like it's a small community, so we all kind of like know each other, and we'll talk with each other. Like it's great to be able to work together with games that you like, and sometimes it's like wow, like I really love playing your game, and you run into them at GDC or like another events. Like I really love this game. Like hey, I'm working on this thing. Maybe they like it too, and like that's how these collaborations start.
What's the game you were most likely to flip a table playing?
How we were just talking about how games, create a rich history that we build on top of. We learn from the best games, right? Like
100%.
at the same time, there are some games I think that were perhaps made in such a way to get players to buy them after renting. Like when I was a kid, I went to Blockbuster and rented The Lion King. Lion King is a Disney movie, and it's like a game made for kids, and that game is just evil. I mean, first,
Oh, it was dirty.
yeah, I mean, you're a lion and you could be killed by a frog or a bat, and the jumping was just cruel. I mean, it kind of just happened naturally. Like, I wanted to make a game, and then I saw there's a lot of these new like engines like Unity and different technologies, and I said, I'm just gonna start dabbling with it to see what's possible, like what can be made out there. So I kind of fell into it.
Now, as a indie developer, has there ever been like a myth, like somebody's told you you have to know how to do X, Y, and Z, or you'll never make it as a developer, that you've just kind of like over time you've learned that that's not the case?
I think probably one of the things is like maybe this isn't necessarily a myth, but there's a little bit of a survivorship bias, right? And to be able to make games and is already like a huge luxury. The fact that we can take our time to craft different worlds for people to experience. A lot of times it's not going to happen on your first run. Like it's your first game is probably not going to be your best game ever, and that's okay. And the important part is to keep building on top of that. I think maybe a lot of early careers, not just in games, but I think in movies or books or whatever you're trying to create work, like if the first one doesn't work out exactly right, or or you don't get the reception that you want, you might be like disheartened and you might feel like you're gonna like give up. You have to like look at that and analyze like what went wrong, what could you have done better, and how can you build on this for the next one, and then try again. Of course, being able to do that like from a business standpoint is very, very tricky. There's no question of like how hard that is. Keeping your scope low, like smaller, and building up from that piece by piece allows you the chance to find your audience and to refine your mechanics and refine your creation so it becomes a hit.
So let's talk about Table Flip Simulator. Tell me, what is your origin story?
When we were planning out games, we were thinking about, we wanted to make a game that where players can relax and really de-stress, because like I think just nowadays life has gone a lot more stressful. There was this arcade machine in Japan when I went to visit before, where I would see business people hang out at night and flip a table, and like there people were laughing, people were distressing. I was like, all right, how can we bring an experience like this to modern platforms, and how can we have it as experience that players can create their own stories out of too? And like that was kind of like the start of discussing Table Flip Simulator.
What inspired the art style and overall feel of the game?
I give a lot of credit to our artists, Raisa and Ira, who really helped put that together. We talked about low poly at the beginning because we knew we wanted the game to be silly, and if the characters were realistic, it might not feel the same way. Raisa one day came in, she was like, "Wouldn't it be funny if the table had eyes?" And I was like, "Let's do it." Like that was just one of those jokes that came out, and we tested it. Was just we're all laughing. We brought, yeah, that's gotta be in. And another day, like when we're flipping a table, like Eric, who's one of the designers, came in with this idea of like it would be really fun if they went Super Saiyan when they flipped the table. And we're like, let's do it. And like that's what I think is great about working with a team who loves the game too, because everyone gets a chance to have their own input. And like now when we see it, like all these things they click right away. But if someone said, going Super Saiyan, flipping a table with that's shocked when you flip it, it probably wouldn't be the first thing that would come to mind.
How long has Table Flip Simulator been in development?
It's been in development for about 2 years now.
Hypothetically speaking, how much experience do you personally have flipping tables?
I never flipped a table in real life, but I have played the arcade game, so I guess there was some R&D on it. We like to hide a lot of secrets for players to discover, and each level has a main objective, and then there are other secrets to discover. Finding these secrets allows you to unlock more secret levels. Part of it is like I think the fun of it is for players to imagine themselves in these situations, and we wanted to give them a chance to do things that they might imagine. Like for instance, like in the barista level, there's a kid who's walking around, and if you throw him coffee, he gets like all hyper and starts dancing. And like we wanted to really allow players to express themselves. I think one time when one of our engineers was playing the game, like when she was throwing stuff, she was speaking as like the barista, and like sometimes cursing the customers that came in, but that's the vibe that we want.
The game will be a part of Steam Next Fest, correct?
Yeah.
What are you most excited for players to experience there?
We're just looking forward to seeing players' reactions, and I can't wait to see all the flip moments that people make, and hopefully some people will share them to see all like the crazy flips that they do, and seeing people laugh like when they're playing the game like that. Those would be like the biggest things that would show us that like, hey, we made something that people are gonna love.
Let's switch gears and let's talk about Robo Frenzy. Tell me the origin story behind this one.
Robo Frenzy came from an idea of like, we have Connect Tank and we wanted to do something more actiony. And there are a lot of iterations before we came on to what Robo Frenzy is today. I think a lot of us on the team, like we play Monster Hunter, we grind through it. We gotta get armor that we can brag about when we're playing the game. But I think one of the things like in Monster Hunter, you're fighting the same monsters like over and over again. We're thinking, all right, how can we make something that's like less grindy and more approachable? And how can we make something that has like a lot of variation so players have a say in what they're fighting? I think like we had a lot of prototypes before we came up with the make your own boss idea. And once we started to play with that, I was like, wow, this is a lot of fun. Like when we were just messing around with each other, trying to one up each other with different challenges.
You've shown Robo Frenzy at a lot of events. How did playtesting at the shows like GDC, Gamescom, and Tokyo Game Show shape the game?
I think actually when we first showed the game at GDC, there was a mechanic where players would connect these weapon making factors together. This was actually really from Connect Tank, where we had this like conveyor belt system where you load cannons that your tank fires, and we took that system and that became Robo Frenzy's base weapon making system. All of us have played on the team have played Connect Tank for like hundreds of hours, so everything just seems so natural to do. But as we kept testing it more and more, that actually became a barrier, and we saw that it stopped players from really just getting a weapon that they want to have, and it stopped players from being able to just fight a boss with a weapon they want to make, because you would have to go through like a very long crafting process. So seeing that, like we iterated and we like sped up the crafting process to make it just more accessible.
So when people are playing your game for the first time, what emotions do you want them to feel?
For Robo Frenzy, I want them to feel it's challenging and also the thrill of victory. Like it's like, wow, this thing was tough, but I did it. And then it's especially then when you fight one of your friends' bosses, it's like I beat that boss. Like, you know, you feel like really you feel like a champion. But on the other side, if you made the boss and you're watching your friend fight it and that boss totally creams them, then you also feel like a champion too.
Is working with a publisher something you want again for Robo Frenzy or future projects?
We've been really fortunate to work with publishers for like a lot of our projects. Like we worked with Arc System Works, NIS America, Natsume, like PM Studios, and like it's great to work with publishers too. I think for Table Flip Simulator and Robo Frenzy, we built both these games for communities to play with each other and streamers to share with the community, especially with Robo Frenzy. Like streamers can make a boss that they can share with their fans, or you know, a community members can make bosses for another streamer to try to defeat. You know, so if there's a publisher out there that sounds cool with them, yeah, we're totally open to hearing more.
Do you feel the term indie has changed during the time of developing video games?
Yeah, I think it's changed a lot. I think there's for a lot of players when I think of indie games, they're looking for titles that are creative, that are just different from the regular games out there. I mean, when the title first started to come out, it was just tended to be like small studios, but now I think it's become more like creative games.
What does being an indie developer mean to you personally today?
Being a developer means a lot to me. You know, just getting a chance to be able to do something that I didn't even think there was a path to, like when I was a kid, already means the world. So, and being an indie means I get to do this and get to work on these like really weird, different projects.
Do you see yourself staying in indie long term? What does the future look like for you?
I think the most important thing is that I can keep working with our team. Like it's just not me. Like I'm not an author. It's a group effort, and you know, being able to work with the same team and to have everyone have the same voice is really important. So I just don't think that can happen if the team grew too much, because then it's really hard to have everyone have the same input. So being able to stay and to create games like this would for a long term and to be sustainable is definitely our goal.
What's the LA indie scene like right now?
I think there are a lot of great storytellers. I think that's what LA is known for. And there's a lot of great cinematic and story-based games here, and a lot of really creative games that are local to LA.
My next question for you is, do you have a creator program or any way for creators to reach out?
Creators can email us at creators@YummyYummyTummy.com. We're very happy to give creators codes. I mean, we built these games for content creators in mind, especially for Table Flip Simulator for recording those ragdoll physics moments, and Robo Frenzy for sharing bosses with your friends. So yeah, please reach out to us.
What's the one action you would love for viewers to take after watching this?
We would be super grateful if you could wishlist our games. But I think for both players and indie developers to realize like where we are right now with all these amazing games out there, that there's a deep history behind them, that we're building together. And like we're learning from those games of the past, and like whatever we're making now might not be perfect, but if we keep learning from it, we can make better games, not just from our games, but from all the other games out there.
Very cool. Do you have any social medias?
We have TikTok at YYT Games.
Any thoughts that you would like to leave players or fellow indie developers with?
Like if we look at game development, like 10 or 15 years ago, there's a lot of learning hardware. There's a lot of like trying to master like a GPU to make the games look better every time, right? But now we're at a time where I think we've reached that plateau. Now we're really focused on making great stories, great mechanics, great experiences for players. And that comes with a lot of iteration and a lot of learnings just from all the games that have come before and all the games that are out right now. And being able to understand that your work today might not be your best work because it's going to take time to get there. I think for any creative process, you need that time to do that.
Spencer, thank you again for taking the time to chat with us today.
Thanks, Bear, for taking the time to chat with me. It was great to talk to you about the projects we're working on, and I can't wait to see the rest of the interviews and meet these other developers too.
Once again, this has been What is an Indie, presented by APS, produced by Space Time Strategies. Huge thank you to our guests, Emerson, James, Ian, and Spencer. I've been your host, Bear, and if you'd like to be a part of a future showcase with us, all you have to do is check the contact information in the description down below. Can't wait to see you next show. Parker, I can't have you in this take. And welcome to a segment we like to call I Don't Know What I'm Talking About.